Module 5, Media Convergence and eDemocracy. In Module 5, we explore some of the concepts related to the convergence of media and technology, the development of social media, and the power that internet can have in facilitating access and participation among users. Now, new media, both in the content they provide and the platforms through which they provide such content, have affected the way people communicate, relate to each other, watch media, produce and distribute visual content, and even the way people participate in social and political life. You can check out this article for some definition. And as I did in the last lecture, I have posted links throughout the lecture script. So if you go and download the PDF file with the script, you will get links to all the articles that I mentioned in my lecture. So going back to our PowerPoint presentation, because of the broad range of issues that media convergence, new media, and internet democracy involve, I believe it's good to start this lesson by opening up some questions which we can discuss and hopefully answer in class. First of all, I would like to ask and open up some questions about, is the internet democratizing American politics? Do political websites and blogs mobilize inactive citizens and make the public spheres more inclusive? How powerful is Facebook social activism? How truly democratic are online forums? Were Twitter and Facebook really instrumental in the Arab Spring or the Twitter revolutions that happened in the Middle East? How empowering is online participation? Did WikiLeaks eliminate old or create new elites? And do media facilitate access and equality, or do they increase the digital divide? So think of these questions as you go through this lecture and through your readings, because they can really sort of drive the major concept. They can really drive your understanding of the major concepts that are explored both in this lecture and in the readings that I assigned. Now, USC Professor Henry Jenkins is currently the most renowned scholar studying media convergence and convergence culture at large. His research has focused on how individuals in contemporary culture tap into and combine numerous different media sources. In particular, he suggests that media convergence should be understood as a cultural process and not simply as a technological endpoint. And you can read his academic blog in the link that I posted in the script. So Jenkins identifies three major elements that illustrate convergence culture. If you look at this slide, you can see how Jenkins defines each of them, and you can notice how media convergence deals both with technology and audience behavior in an increasingly mediated world. Participatory culture describes the way contemporary media need active participation and active consumers. Collective intelligence explores the way both knowledge and consumerism are now collective practices where users can share their experiences. And this is a definition that is given by Jenkins himself in his book Convergence Culture. Now, I'd like to focus on collective intelligence for a moment because it is perhaps the concept less immediate to grasp. Jenkins has studied multiple online communities and the way they participate in the formation of knowledge and decision-making, including narrative shifts to shows as a consequence of fans' comments. These communities are held together through the mutual production and reciprocal exchange of knowledge. Such groups, and here I'm quoting Jenkins directly, make available to the collective intellect all of the pertinent knowledge available to it at a given moment. And more importantly, he argues, they serve as sites for collective discussion, negotiations, and development. Now, Jenkins used to work at MIT, where they actually have a Center for Collective Intelligence. And once again, you can check out their website in the link, if you click on the link that I posted on the script. Now, as a case study for convergence culture, and including the three elements of media convergence, participatory culture, and collective intelligence, Jenkins looks at a specific online community whose goal is to spoil the reality TV show Survivors. Fans of the show use all sorts of strategies, including satellite technology, hacking emails, stalking contestants, etc., to try to spoil the show. All knowledge collected is shared in a gated website where only well-known spoilers are allowed. The right to know collective information directly depends on how much information one is able to provide and the reputation one can build. So the spoiling follows a logical sequence. The first phase is focused on identifying the location because the impact of the production is felt first where the series was shot. The second phase is focused on identifying the contestants, since the second impact is felt on the local communities where these average Americans come from. In 2003, however, a non-identified spoiler named Chill1 began posting information in the community. The gatekeepers complained because of the lack of guarantee and the inability to verify his credibility. But other members of the community enjoyed Chill1's ability to play according to his own rules instead of following the strict regulation imposed by the gatekeepers. And some of the interviews that Jenkins was able to collect among the participants in this community are actually quite critical of the gatekeepers. What they say is that everything we have is also theirs because we're open. Everything they have most definitely is not ours because members of the gated communities may or may not feel like dropping in and sharing it. They have sources we do not, and they like to hoard information, which is what the private groups are all about. So this is just an example of how people, and specifically users, since we're talking about new media, can have their voice heard through the use of new media. While this case concerns fandom and its practices, there are many other ways in which users can become involved in causes they consider important. From politics, to education, to animal rights, to the environment, for example. So users' participation in social life via the use of new and social media is called eDemocracy. And eDemocracy incorporates 21st century information and communication technology to promote democracy. That means a form of government in which all adult citizens are presumed to be eligible to participate equally in the proposal, development, and creation of laws. eDemocracy encompasses social, economic, and cultural conditions that enable the free and equal practice of political self-determination. Now, the concept of public participation in social matters and debates is clearly not a novelty that pertains exclusively to new media, though. The action of coming together in a public sphere to debate public matters dates back to ancient Greece and its democratic government, at least. However, the birth of the specific concept of the public sphere needs to be located in 18th century Germany. Sociologist and philosopher Jürgen Habermas theorized the public sphere and in 1962 published his seminal work titled The Structural Transformation of the Public Sphere. So in this lesson, I'd like to discuss eDemocracy and participatory culture in relation to the broader concept of the public sphere. The public sphere is an area of social life where individuals can come together to freely discuss and identify societal problems, and through that discussion influence political action. Habermas defines the public sphere as a society engaged in critical public debate. The basic ideal belief in public sphere theory is that the government's laws and the policies should be steered by the public sphere, and that the only legitimate governments are those that listen to the public sphere. So to continue, I would like to list some of the elements that make up the public spheres, or the conditions that, according to Habermas, are part of the public sphere. First of all is the formation of public opinion. So the public sphere should help people form a public opinion. A second condition of the public sphere is that all citizens should have access. And also that people should be able to meet about matters of general interest on the basis of freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom to expression and publication of opinions, and freedom from economic and political control. So, but how does this relate to the internet and to our discussion of eDemocracy? Well, an example comes from President Obama's 2014 statement to the FCC in support of net neutrality, in which he clarifies the importance of limiting any kind of monopoly in favor of users' freedom of choice and expression. I'm actually going to insert the video that I downloaded from YouTube so you can actually see it as part of this presentation.
Hi everybody. Ever since the internet was created, it's been organized around basic principles of openness, fairness, and freedom. There are no gatekeepers deciding which sites you get to access. There are no toll roads on the information superhighway. This set of principles, the idea of net neutrality, has unleashed the power of the internet and given innovators the chance to thrive. Abandoning these principles would threaten to end the internet as we know it. That's why I'm laying out a plan to keep the internet free and open. And that's why I'm urging the Federal Communications Commission to do everything they can to protect net neutrality for everyone. They should make it clear that whether you use a computer, phone, or tablet, internet providers have a legal obligation not to block or limit your access to a website. Cable companies can't decide which online stores you can shop at or which streaming services you can use. And they can't let any company pay for priority over its competitors. To put these protections in place, I'm asking the FCC to reclassify internet service under Title II of a law known as the Telecommunications Act. In plain English, I'm asking them to recognize that for most Americans, the internet has become an essential part of everyday communication and everyday life. The FCC is an independent agency, and ultimately this decision is theirs alone. But the public has already commented nearly 4 million times, asking the FCC to make sure that consumers, not the cable company, gets to decide which sites they use. Americans are making their voices heard and standing up for the principles that make the internet a powerful force for change. As long as I'm president, that's what I'll be fighting for too.
So while Obama claims that there's no gatekeepers or tolls to pay in the information highway, Jenkins' study about spoiling survivors seems to suggest otherwise. The myth of digital democracy reveals that, contrary to popular belief, the internet has done little to broaden political discourse, but in fact empowers a small set of elites, some new, but mostly familiar. So instead of creating a free public sphere for debate, the internet has only reinforced old elites and has created new ones, allowing for a divide in the way people can access the web first, and secondly, in the way they can get their voice heard. Also, discussions of gatekeeping and internet infrastructure highlight a crucial distinction that needs to be made regarding political voice. many continue to assume that the internet allows motivated citizens, for the first time, the potential to be heard by a worldwide audience, for example, through Facebook activism. However, who speaks and who gets heard are two very separate questions. On the internet, the link between the two is weaker than it is in almost any other area of political life. This concept is called digital divide. And a digital divide is an economic and social inequality with regard to access to, use of, or impact of information and communication technologies. The divide within countries, such as the digital divide in the United States, for example, may refer to inequalities between individuals, households, businesses, or geographic areas, usually at different socioeconomic levels or other demographic categories. If you want to know more about the digital divide within the US, you can take a look at the Pew Research Center study in the link that I posted on your lecture script. If we look instead of the digital divide that happens internationally, the divide between different countries or regions of the world is referred to as the global digital divide, and it examines the technological gap between developing and developed countries on an international scale. And you can see some of the results of these 2014 study, which shows how many people are connected to the internet in developed countries versus how many people are connected in developing countries. Now, the digital divide is in part caused and shaped by two seemingly contradictory trends in the American media environment. On the one hand, new media technologies have lowered production and distribution costs, they have expanded the range of available delivery channels, and they have enabled consumers to archive, annotate, appropriate, and recirculate media content in powerful new ways. And YouTube is an example of these new power that users have. On the other hand, however, there has been an alarming concentration of the ownership of mainstream commercial media, with a small handful of multinational media conglomerates dominating all sectors of the entertainment industry. If we look at the infographics on the screen, for example, we can see how the American media industry went from 90% of the media being owned by 50 companies in 1983 to 90% of the media being owned by 6 companies in 2012. In this system of political and media oligarchy, WikiLeaks, a new force fighting for democratic access to information, emerged in 2010. Initiated in 2006 in Iceland by the organization Sunshine Press, WikiLeaks monopolized news worldwide in 2010 when its founder, Julian Assange, released classified information regarding the war in Afghanistan and informing of corrupt elections in Kenya. Julian Assange, an Australian and internet activist, is generally described as its founder, editor-in-chief, and director. And here you can see him on the cover of Time. WikiLeaks is an international, online, non-profit journalistic organization which publishes secret information, news leaks, and classified media from anonymous sources. Its website claimed a database of more than 1.2 million documents within a year of its launch. But WikiLeaks has some sort of conceptual implications that are very interesting for what we are covering in this module. Specifically, to ask about the implication of WikiLeaks for freedom of speech, media ethics, and democracy is to ask questions of responsibility and how WikiLeaks could reconfigure the digital public sphere. Now, Everybody in the general public, and especially among professional and academics, felt that something new would happen in the public sphere and in the field of media reporting. There had been leaks and whistleblowers before, but never before had such a huge cachet of secret documents been leaked to the news media. It was not only the sheer number of documents which were an innovation, but also the way they made their way into the media. What shocked the mainstream media and international governments all over the world was the way in which WikiLeaks exposed secrets that before had only belonged to an ivory tower and were considered impossible to breach. Critics of WikiLeaks have argued that the leak of information did not really reveal major secrets, but contributed instead to ruin many diplomatic relations that had taken years to build. So whether we consider Julian Assange to be a hero or a villain is less important, I think, than the debate that WikiLeaks has generated worldwide about the lack of transparency in news media. With its own flaws, WikiLeaks has provided a forum for eDemocracy and freedom of speech to be discussed at the highest political level in the digital era. So take a look at your readings. One of the readings discusses WikiLeaks specifically, and the other two readings from which you can choose discuss instead the elements of convergence culture that Jenkins discusses. So make sure that you read them both before class, so we will have enough elements to discuss and enough news and ideas that we can add to our critical collage.